There comes a moment in life when you realize no one is coming to save you. Not your partner, not your children, not your siblings. Everyone goes their own way, and you're left standing in front of the mirror with the only person who has been there through every silence, every fall, every sleepless night filled with anxiety. That person is you. It's an uncomfortable truth, but also a liberating one. In the end, it doesn't matter how many hands promised never to let go. The only company guaranteed until your very last day is the one you build with yourself. And if you don't learn to care for her, to listen to her, to hold her up, old age can become an emotional prison. In this video, we're going to explore 7 essential lessons to reconnect with the only presence that truly stays with you until the end. These aren't pretty phrases or vague ideas. They're truths that hurt, but also awaken. And believe me, the last lesson might completely change the way you understand aging and your own story. I'm Gabriel, and if you're ready to face what many prefer to stay silent about, stay with me until the end. Because this time, we're not talking about others. We're talking about you. Who's going to be there for you when everyone else is gone? Not when you die, but long before that. Who's going to listen when the house is quiet, when your children are busy with their lives, when there's no partner to hold you or friends who stick around? This isn't a question for the future, it's a reality many are already living, even if they don't talk about it. One of the hardest parts of aging isn't illness or fatigue. It's the feeling that you've been left alone with someone you don't even know, yourself. And that brings us to our first point. Recognize your true lifelong companion. Because it's not your partner, it's not your children, it's not anyone in your family, it's your consciousness, your inner voice, your soul. That quiet presence that was there when you cried in silence, when you kept quiet to avoid hurting others, when you carried what no one else wanted to carry. The one who has seen your contradictions, your anger, your defeats. And even though you've ignored her many times, she has never left your side. The problem is we've spent so long taking care of others, keeping things in order, being useful, that we've forgotten how to care for ourselves. We disconnected from that voice. We stopped listening to her, or worse, we filled her with blame. We started treating ourselves like a burden, as if we no longer mattered, as if the only value in our lives was what we did for others. And let me tell you, that is a silent form of abandonment. Because when you abandon yourself, everything else loses meaning. A few years ago, I met a woman who told me something I still can't shake. After everyone left, I realized I didn't know how to be with myself. Silence scared me. My own voice annoyed me. I didn't like the person who was left behind. She was 73 years old, had 3 adult children, a modest pension, and a peaceful home. But what weighed on her most wasn't the lack of company. It was the emptiness she felt being alone with herself. I asked her what she did with that emptiness, and her answer was a lesson in itself. I faced it head on. I started talking to myself like I was a forgotten friend. I asked for forgiveness. I asked what I needed. And I began to care for myself like I never had before. It wasn't easy. She had to break through a lot of learned ideas, all those phrases we've heard 1,000 times. Others come first. A good mother sacrifices herself. Strong women don't complain. But she did it. And by doing so, she found a peace she had never known, not even when she was surrounded by people. In Stoicism, there's a powerful idea that echoes this. Your mind is your sacred place. Marcus Aurelius put it this way: retreat into yourself, especially when you need peace. There is no refuge more calm than your own soul. These aren't empty words. They're an invitation to return to your center, to build a relationship with yourself that doesn't rely on others' presence or approval. Maybe you don't see it yet, but that woman you are when no one is watching, the one who still has desires, who still feels fear, who still dreams in secret. She's the only one who's going to be with you until the end. And if you don't recognize her now, if you don't start caring for her, understanding her, listening to her, then aging can become a prison where you feel like a stranger to yourself. This isn't about resigning yourself to loneliness. It's about transforming it, about no longer seeing it as a punishment, but as a chance to rediscover who you really are. Because when you learn to be with yourself without needing applause or conditional affection, then yes, any other company becomes a gift, not a desperate need. Remember this: you are the one presence you cannot abandon. You are your most faithful companion. And the day you choose to look at yourself with respect, with patience, with love, that's the day your freedom truly begins. This is where the journey starts. And there's still so much more to say. You know, there's a truth you can no longer ignore. You're the only one who will be with you until the end. And once you understand that, a deep, uncomfortable but necessary process begins. A process of reconnecting with who you really are. But there's something else, something that quietly sabotages that reconnection every day. We've reached the second key point in this video: protect your inner voice above any external opinion. Think about it. How many times have you made important decisions based more on what others expected from you than on what you truly needed? How many times have you silenced your intuition to please, to avoid conflict, to not disappoint? The worst part is that after years of doing it, you don't even know what your real voice sounds like anymore. It's been drowned in noise. Your children's judgments, your sister's subtle criticisms, all the shoulds that were drilled into you. And that noise doesn't just confuse you, it weakens you. It makes you believe you don't know what to do with your life, when the truth is, you just can't hear yourself through everyone else's opinions. In Stoicism, Epictetus was very clear. It's not things that disturb us, but our opinion about them. But today, many of those opinions aren't even yours. They're ideas you inherited, were forced into, or adopted out of fear of being alone. And as long as you let them guide you, you'll never be able to build a life that truly reflects who you are. Because being respectful is one thing. Living at the mercy of other people's judgments is something else entirely. This inner confusion has deeper consequences than you might think. It affects you when you look in the mirror and don't know if the woman staring back is free or just resigned. It affects you when you talk to your children and can't set boundaries without feeling guilty. It affects you when you swallow your discomfort in a relationship just to avoid being seen as difficult. Little by little, that habit of silencing yourself to avoid disturbing others ends up eroding your dignity. And when dignity fades, fear sets in, fear of rejection, of feeling useless, of becoming invisible. The cruelest part of this problem is how deeply rooted it is. Many women of your generation were raised to please, to care, to sacrifice. They weren't taught to choose for themselves, but to be chosen. And while that might have made sense once, now it's become a trap. Because now you need something else. You need to reclaim your right to decide, to speak your mind without fear, to make mistakes without being seen as a failure. Most of all, you need to learn to respect yourself, even when no one else does. There's a spiritual side to all of this that we can't ignore. When your inner voice goes quiet, your connection to what is sacred also fades. Not in the religious sense, but in that deep, wise part of you that some call soul, others consciousness, and others simply inner truth. That voice doesn't shout or demand, it only whispers. But if you don't listen, your life becomes a cycle of meaningless routines. And then you start to feel like you're aging, not just on the outside, but inside too. Picture a house with all the windows shut. At each one, someone's outside telling you how you should live, feel, and react. And instead of opening a single window to see for yourself, you spend your time adjusting the curtains so they feel comfortable with what they see. That's exactly what happens when you let outside opinions carry more weight than your own clarity. You end up living a life decorated for others, but hollow inside. That's why the message here is clear. You need to reclaim your center, not through yelling or conflict, but with a quiet, firm decision. From now on, my voice matters. My needs are not selfish. My boundaries are not coldness. My truth doesn't need to be justified. That decision, even if it feels small, is the beginning of a silent revolution. It's the moment you stop living as a reflection and start living as a root. Because if you're the only one who'll be with you until the end, then your voice should be the first one you hear each morning, not the last. Not the one that gets silenced, but the one that leads, that holds you, that says, "This is who I am, and I'm done asking the world for permission to exist." Let's keep going, because what's next is going to challenge you even more. Now you see it. If you don't start by listening to yourself, others will keep making decisions for you. And if your inner voice doesn't have a firm place, any outside opinion can throw you off balance. But there's something even deeper, something many women sense, but few dare to accept. This next step is crucial, because without it, you'll stay stuck in the same cycle, be the refuge you've always searched for in others. This isn't a feel-good phrase. It's an urgent call to stop waiting for someone to hold you, to understand you, to give you the place you can create for yourself. Because if you've spent your life hoping to be cared for, protected, or validated by others, it might mean you haven't yet understood your own power. Many women struggle with this idea because they were raised to give, to yield, to be useful. But they were rarely taught to care for themselves with the same devotion they gave to others. And when old age comes and those others are gone, or simply emotionally unavailable, they painfully discover that they never learned how to stand on their own. Stoicism doesn't ask you to isolate yourself or reject human connection, but it does insist on one truth. Your peace cannot depend on what others give you, because what they give can be taken away at any moment. Seneca wrote, "The wise person is self-sufficient, but needs friends to live better, not to live." That's the difference. Others can be company, not your condition for existing. So how does this apply? What does it really mean to be your own refuge? It's not abstract, it's a daily practice. It starts with talking to yourself the way you would talk to someone you love. Without blame, without judgment, just presence. It means that instead of reaching for comfort in a phone call that never comes, you sit with yourself and honestly ask, "What do I need right now?" Maybe the answer is silence, a walk, writing out your feelings, crying without explanation, or simply resting without guilt. Every time you choose to care for yourself with intention, without waiting for someone else to do it, you're building emotional independence. You're sending a powerful message to your soul. I'm here with you, and I'm not letting go. A woman recently wrote to me and shared something simple, but powerful. She said that for years, whenever she felt sad or unsure, she would call her daughter, but her daughter was always busy, always had something more urgent. At first, she felt rejected. But one day, instead of dialing the phone, she made herself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and started writing a letter to herself. Not to read later, just to be there for herself in that moment. And something shifted. It wasn't magical, it wasn't instant, but it was real. She told me, "For the first time I felt like I didn't need my daughter to answer, because I was already listening to myself." That is being your own refuge. That is dignity. If these words are reaching a part of you that you had forgotten, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. That way, I can keep creating content that speaks directly and honestly to the woman who's beginning to wake up inside you. Tell me where in the world you're watching from, and if you feel like it's time to become your own foundation, write this phrase in the comments: "I stand on my own." We still have important lessons ahead, and I promise you the final one could completely change the way you prepare for what's to come. When you start becoming your own refuge, something shifts inside. You no longer need constant external validation to feel like you matter. But just as you take that step, a silent, almost invisible trap appears. A voice that softly, but persistently, whispers, "You're alone because you're no longer useful." And if you don't recognize it in time, it can turn into an emotional prison. That's why we've arrived at the fourth point of this video. Learn to live with your solitude without letting it destroy you. This is one of the most common and painful mistakes. We were taught to fear solitude as if it were a punishment. From a young age, we were told that being alone means being incomplete, that companionship validates our existence, that without someone by our side, life loses its meaning. And even though we know this isn't entirely true, we still carry it deep in our hearts. The problem isn't being alone. The problem is what we believe solitude says about us. We think it means we've failed, been abandoned, or done something wrong. So every time silence arrives, we fill it with anxiety. Every time there's no one to call, we feel like something's missing. But what's missing isn't someone else. It's our ability to be at peace with ourselves. When solitude is misunderstood, it becomes fear. And that fear leads us to make bad decisions, clinging to draining relationships, tolerating mistreatment just to avoid being alone, returning to closed chapters just to feel some kind of company. Many women move in and out of spaces where they don't feel valued but stay because they're afraid of the echo in their own empty home. They don't realize that echo can be the beginning of a new conversation with themselves. Because solitude isn't the absence of love, it's an opportunity to hear your own voice without interference. Stoicism has a very clear perspective on this. For Marcus Aurelius, peace of mind comes when we stop fearing the inevitable. And solitude, at some point in life, is inevitable. Our bodies change, our relationships evolve, our children follow their own paths. But if you learn to see solitude as a sacred space rather than a sentence, you can discover something deeply revealing. Your ability to inhabit yourself, to support yourself, to not depend. There's a kind of dignity that only appears when you can be with yourself without discomfort or urgency. It's a spiritual steadiness that transforms the way you move through the world. You're no longer walking in search of someone to join you. You're walking knowing that even alone you are whole. But this trap creeps in slowly. It doesn't hit all at once. It slips into everyday moments, when you feel guilty for not having visitors, when you compare yourself to women who seem more surrounded, when you wonder if you're worth less because no one's there to hold you at night. That's when the idea begins to grow that solitude is your enemy. And if you don't confront that thought, if you don't give it a new meaning, it can lead you to a dark place where everything you do is just to avoid being alone. And living like that isn't living. What I'm suggesting here isn't resignation, it's elevation. Start to see solitude as a fertile stage, as a garden you can tend with simple yet meaningful gestures. Your voice speaking to you with kindness, your hands doing something that brings you joy, your thoughts finding order in the quiet. Spirituality doesn't grow in noise, it's cultivated in stillness. And this stage of life offers you that chance to return to your center, to let go of what no longer matters, to hold on to what truly does. So pause for a moment and ask yourself, are you running from solitude, or are you ready to truly meet it? Because in it, you may find a wisdom no one else can give you. And once that happens, your presence becomes so strong that you no longer need anyone else to confirm it. Then, and only then, can you share your life from a place of choice, not from need. And that, believe me, changes everything. Let's keep going. There's still so much more to say. If you've come to understand that solitude isn't your enemy, but a quiet teacher, then you're already one step closer to reconnecting with who you truly are. But there's another obstacle, one that many carry for years without realizing how deeply it drains them. We've arrived at the fifth point in this video. Let go of the need to be indispensable in order to feel valuable. This idea, while it may sound noble, can be a subtle trap that wears you down without you even noticing. For decades, you were told you were essential, that everything would fall apart without you, that your worth came from what you gave, what you solved, and what you carried for others. But now, when you're no longer needed in the same way, it feels like something inside you is collapsing. And that's devastating. The mistake was confusing love with usefulness. You were made to believe that if you weren't fixing, helping, or holding things together, then you didn't deserve to be seen or valued. That's why so many women reach this stage of life feeling empty, not knowing how to stand without playing the role of everyone's savior. And it's not your fault. It's the result of years of being measured by how well you could support others, not by your right to exist on your own. But if you don't let go of that need, you'll keep giving until there's nothing left. You'll keep saying yes when you mean no. You'll keep tolerating emotional manipulation disguised as affection. And worst of all, you'll keep postponing your life, hoping that one day someone will thank you. But that day almost never comes, and deep down, you know it. Holding on to that mindset doesn't just wear out your body, it breaks your spirit. Because every time you give yourself away without being valued, a part of you dims. You become a silent presence that everyone depends on, but no one really hears. A functional shadow who fixes everything, but no longer dreams. And that, over time, creates a bitterness that poisons you from within. You feel anger, but don't know how to express it. You feel hurt, but don't know how to name it. And in the end, you start believing the lie that you're the problem, that you're no longer useful, that you no longer matter. But that's not true. What's really happening is that you need a different way of living, a mindset not based on being needed, but on being free. And that means accepting that you don't have to be anyone's foundation to be respected. You can be yourself with your pace, your boundaries, your desires. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to justify anything. You can simply live. And this doesn't come from motivational quotes or empty affirmations. It comes from uncomfortable decisions, saying no, even if it upsets someone, distancing yourself from people who only come around when they need something, taking care of yourself even if it disappoints others. Because your value doesn't lie in what you do for others. Your value lies in what you recognize in yourself, even if no one else sees it. Seneca put it plainly, no one is free who is enslaved by the gratitude of others. And that kind of slavery often wears the mask of virtue. If you want to break this pattern, you need to change the question you ask yourself each day. Instead of thinking, who do I need to help today? Start asking, what do I need to reclaim for myself today? Not because you need to become selfish, but because if you keep giving without limits, you'll run out of yourself. And if you don't take care of you, no one else will. Don't get it twisted. Caring for others is a beautiful act, but only if you don't disappear in the process. Today, you can make a quiet but powerful decision. I will no longer measure my worth by how useful I am to others. I will begin to discover who I am beyond the role I was given. Because what holds you up is not being indispensable. What holds you up is the respect you give yourself even when others no longer do. And once you claim that, it shows. It changes your presence. It changes your energy. It changes your path. What comes next will keep dismantling old patterns. Get ready. When you stop needing to be indispensable, something inside you breaks free. But that freedom comes with a deeper responsibility, to take an honest look at the life you've built and ask yourself if it truly reflects who you are. Because the hardest part isn't realizing others don't value you, it's realizing you've been putting yourself second for far too long. And now that you're standing at the threshold of a new chapter, there are no more excuses. It's time to make different choices. That's why we've reached the 6th point in this video. Rewrite your story without waiting for anyone's apology. Pause for a moment. Imagine you wake up tomorrow and everything is the same. The same empty routine, the same people who don't really hear you, the same conversations that go nowhere. Imagine months go by, then years, and you're still waiting for someone to say, "I'm sorry I wasn't there. I failed you. I only saw you when it was convenient." But it never happens. Because most of the time, it won't. The people who hurt you have already closed that chapter. And if you're still waiting for an apology to feel free, all you're doing is handing them control over your story. Here's the hard truth. The apology that never comes can't be the center of your life. Because as long as you hold on to that unmet expectation, as long as you keep replaying what they should have said, you're staying trapped in the pain. And pain without purpose doesn't teach. It only drains. Stoicism is clear on this. You can't control what others do or don't do, but you have full power over how you choose to respond. And if you choose to keep waiting, you stay frozen. But if you choose to close that chapter yourself, then you become the author of your own path. So many women live bound to guilt and wounds that aren't even theirs. They carry the weight of harsh words, of absences that broke them, of betrayals they still don't know how to process. And the worst part is, they've started to believe that this is all life has to offer, a string of disappointments. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can say, "This hurt me, but it won't define me." You can stop explaining yourself to people who chose not to understand. You can rebuild without permission, without witnesses, without needing applause. What I'm offering here isn't a magical fix. It's a tough but honest invitation. Stop waiting for emotional justice from those who couldn't even give you basic respect. Start writing a new story where you're not the silent victim, but the clear-eyed protagonist. Because if not now, when? If you don't break the pattern today, this habit of staying in place, waiting for validation, how many more years will you give to that silence? Picture yourself 5 years from now. What story would you like to tell? One of a woman who kept carrying other people's mistakes? Or one of someone who, even without being asked, chose to heal on her own? That decision doesn't belong to your children, your ex, or anyone else. It belongs to you. And what you choose to do with that power can change everything. There's one last point, the most intimate, the most defining. Get ready, because that's where everything either falls into place or falls apart. Let's keep going. If you've come to terms with the fact that no one is going to give you the apology you've been waiting for, then you've already taken a giant step toward your own freedom. Because letting go of that expectation isn't resignation, it's maturity. And once you start writing your story from a different place, with your feet on the ground and your awareness awake, you begin to realize something deeper, that this entire journey means nothing unless you make peace with the person you'll be on your final day. This is the 7th and final point in this video, and probably the hardest to face. Make peace with the person you'll be on your last day. This isn't about fearing death or dramatizing the time you have left. It's about asking yourself a question most people avoid until it's too late. Are you living in a way you'll be able to respect when that final moment comes? Because there's no comfort in saying, "I did what I could," if deep down you know you mostly did what others wanted, what was expected of you, what was easier so you wouldn't make waves. There's no comfort in saying, "At least I wasn't alone," if that company came with demands, lack of love, or dependency in disguise. On the day you close your eyes for the last time, the only thing that will truly matter is the peace you feel within yourself, and that peace isn't built in an afternoon. It's cultivated in every decision you make, in every boundary you set, in every time you choose what's good for you, even if it's not the easiest path. This isn't meant to scare you, it's meant to hold you accountable, because by now there's no time left for excuses. You can't keep saying you didn't know, that it wasn't the right moment, that maybe later. You're past the stage of promising yourself change. You're at the stage where you need to make it happen. If you keep waiting for everything to fall into place, you'll waste the most lucid years of your life. Because clarity doesn't last forever. And if you don't use it now, exhaustion will come. Resignation will come. And one day, you'll find yourself lying in bed wondering why you didn't have more courage when you still had choices. Making peace with who you'll be at the end doesn't mean you'll stop being afraid. It means fear no longer gets to decide for you. It means that even when your voice shakes, you say what needs to be said. That even when your chest is tight, you walk away from what harms you. That even without all the answers, you begin to act from truth, not from fear of being alone. Because in the end, the loneliest thing isn't being without people. It's being surrounded and feeling like you can't be yourself. That's what empties you inside. That's what ages your soul. Right now, you have the chance not to prepare for death, but to live with dignity until your very last breath. And that dignity doesn't depend on what others think of you, or whether you were perfect, or how many times you got it wrong. It depends on this, that when you look in the mirror for the last time, you can say calmly and truthfully, I didn't betray myself. I took care of me. I respected me. I chose me. That is true peace. The only kind that matters when everything else fades away. And if you've made it this far, you already know what you need to do. What comes next is the decision, and that no one else can make for you. If you've made it this far, it's because you're not looking for easy comfort or sugar-coated answers. You're looking for direction, truth, clarity, and that already sets you apart. Because not many people are willing to look at their lives with honesty, to question what they've kept quiet for years, to let go of the need for validation in order to start living from a place that's more grounded, more intimate, more real. What you've heard today isn't a list of promises, it's a call to decisions you've been putting off. And now that you know these truths, you can't go back without consequences. You can ignore them, yes, but deep down, you'll know you're choosing to remain a spectator in your own story. Or you can do what very few dare to do. Take the lead, break the silence, and live with the clarity this stage of life deserves. This space isn't here to entertain you or soften the blow. It's here to speak to you with respect, because that's what you deserve. To be spoken to like an emotionally mature woman, like someone who has lived, who has lost, who has given more than she received, but who still hasn't given up. This channel exists for that. So you have a space where no one talks down to you, where your intelligence and your power to choose are honored. My name is Gabriel, and the Stoic Garden is simply a voice reminding you that your life can still bloom, but only if you stop waiting for permission. Let me know you are here. Write in the comments, I'm with myself, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. That simple statement makes a difference. It's the start of a deeper conversation with yourself. And if you haven't already, I ask that you subscribe and turn on notifications, not for numbers, but so that more of us can come together, those who choose to live without emotional anesthesia, with dignity, with truth. Share this video with someone who's tired of pretending to be okay while quietly fading inside. Sometimes one phrase, one moment, one reflection can be the turning point someone's been waiting for. And if you feel like this content spoke to you, don't stop here. Watch one of the videos appearing now on screen. Each one is a new door, a new way to wake up. I'll see you there. And remember, your life still belongs to you. Stop giving it away.